A luxury ship moves across calm waters while one passenger senses that something is terribly wrong with the food on board, and as silent warnings spread through the decks, she realizes the danger is closer than anyone dares to admit. The ocean stretched in all directions as the grand vessel of Regent Seven Seas glided across the surface with serene confidence and the soft hum of distant engines woven into the calm air. Among the passengers was a single traveler named Mara Ellington who had boarded the ship with the promise of peace, luxury, and a rare escape from the relentless rhythm of her life. Yet from the moment she stepped into the marble-lined atrium, she sensed an unfamiliar tension, hidden beneath the polished smiles of the crew and the elegant glow of the chandeliers. She moved slowly through the grand hall, observing each detail, for Mara never traveled without watching, without noticing, without wondering what truths waited behind the carefully arranged surfaces. The first sign of unease came during her initial evening in the Compass Rose dining room, where she looked forward to the culinary excellence. The line was famous for the plates arrived gleaming under the soft light, but something felt faintly off. A scent, too strong a color, slightly dimmed vegetables that appeared fresher in the brochure than on her plate. She took a tentative bite and felt the peculiar grain of the dish, a sensation she could not clearly name, and she glanced around the room to see several other diners hesitating, as if wondering the same unspoken question. The staff moved gracefully, but there was rigidity to their steps, as if their choreography required constant effort. Mara noted the tightness around the eyes of the waiter, who poured her water, and when she asked a casual question about the dish origins, his smile faltered and he murmured a vague response before drifting away like a shadow pulled along a corridor by an unseen force. She continued to eat, though her curiosity sharpened with every bite. Later she walked to the outer decks, breathing in the salted breeze, yet her mind lingered on the meal. Something had been wrong, not disastrously, not overtly, but undeniably wrong. She felt the slow curl of suspense uncoiling within her thoughts like a quiet warning from a distant horizon. She knew herself well enough to trust such instincts in the following days. Strange murmurs circled through the passenger community, whispers shared in passing over afternoon tea and cautious conversations held in hushed lounges. Several guests complained discreetly of unusual flavors. Others mentioned feeling unwell, and a few reported glimpsing crates of food being brought aboard at odd hours, long after midnight, when passengers slept and only the most essential crew remained awake. Mara listened, absorbing each detail, shaping each remark into a growing impression that something on the ship was amiss. At breakfast she observed a couple exchanging worried looks beside a plate of fruit that seemed slightly dehydrated despite the crisp morning atmosphere. Across the room, an elderly man stared at his meal as though it concealed a riddle waiting to be solved. Mara took mental note of his expression, the deepening lines around his eyes and the subtle motion of his hands betraying an inner conflict. She felt her curiosity solidify into determination, for she knew the difference between minor disappointment and concealed danger. During the fourth night she wandered toward the observation deck, unable to sleep, a sliver of moonlight casting long pale streaks across the water from the shadows. She heard faint footsteps below, a hurried rhythm interrupted by brief pauses as though someone were carrying a heavy load. She leaned over the railing, spotting two crew members guiding covered containers across the lower deck, their movements urgent, their heads turning repeatedly as though they feared being watched. With steady breath, Mara committed every moment to memory and vowed to follow the trail to its end. She tried questioning the staff more directly, yet each attempt was met with vague reassurances or subtle deflections. One attendant insisted the ship was undergoing routine adjustments. Another claimed supply variations were common and nothing demanded concern. But beneath each statement, Mara detected the faint quiver of uncertainty, a current of unease running through the crew. As she moved through the corridors, she observed even more signs. The kitchen entrances were guarded more heavily than usual. Carts rolled by with hurried speed and conversations hushed instantly. Whenever a guest approached, she felt the atmosphere grow thicker day by day, the suspense tightening like a rope pulled steadily around an unspoken truth. Passageways that once felt inviting now carried an undercurrent of secrecy. Shadows pooled in corners where once there had been light, and every encounter seemed strained, as though the ship itself resisted revealing whatever was happening within its immaculate walls. Mara sensed that she could not remain a mere passenger any longer. She had to become an investigator, driven not by desire but necessity, compelled by the intuition that something on the Regent Seven Seas voyage threatened the safety of all aboard. The final spark ignited one evening when she discovered an unsigned note slipped beneath her cabin door. The message, written in uneven handwriting, warned her to avoid the galley areas and to trust no one connected to the food service operations. The words carried a weight that chilled her more deeply than the cold ocean air, and she realized her situation was no longer a matter of curiosity, but of lurking danger. She sat on her bed, reading the note again and again, the tension in her chest mounting as she considered who might have written it, why they had chosen her, and what secrets the ship concealed in its hidden rooms. Mara knew she was now part of a mystery that demanded resolution, as she sensed that the answers lay within the very heart of the vessel, where shadows masked the truth and the sound of clattering dishes carried faint echoes of fear. With steady breath she rose from the bed, gathering her thoughts as she prepared to uncover the truth, unaware of the magnitude of what she was about to discover, unaware of the silent threat drifting closer with each passing hour, unaware that her journey aboard the Regent Seven Seas was spiraling into a maze of deception, intrigue, and the unsettling reality that something as simple as food could become the center of a looming crisis. She stepped to the cabin door, placed her hand upon the cool metal, and opened it to the dimly lit hall ahead, determined to follow the path wherever it led, for the suspense now wrapped around her like a living thing, and she understood that her role in this unfolding story had only just begun. Mara began her search under the early light of morning, drawn by instinct to the lower service corridors, where the air felt cooler, and the scent of the ocean mingled with something far more unsettling, an earthy aroma that did not belong on a luxury ship. As she walked the narrow hallway, she noticed subtle stains near the base of the walls, faint yet odd, as though crates had been dragged across the floor. In haste she moved with quiet determination, listening for any sound behind the steady of the engines. Eventually she reached a small door left slightly ajar, warm light spilling through the gap. With careful breath she pushed it open, revealing a storage room filled with bins and sealed containers stacked to the ceiling. Yet something felt fundamentally wrong. Many of the containers bore mismatched labels, written by hand rather than printed professionally, and she saw fresh marks carved into the surface of the crates, as though someone had removed the original identifiers. At the far end of the room she noticed a faint vibration, a rhythmic trembling pulsing through one particular stack. She approached cautiously, realizing that beneath the metal panel lay a refrigerated compartment, but the temperature felt inconsistent, pockets of warm air brushing her skin while other corners remained icy cold, as though the system itself struggled under a burden it was not designed to handle. She pressed her fingertips to the panel, sensing the trembling within like a heartbeat grown unnatural and uneven. Suddenly, footsteps sounded from the hall, and she slipped behind a crate, heart racing, as two crew members entered, conversing in hushed, urgent tones. She listened as they spoke of supply delays, contamination concerns, and the inspector's arrival that had been postponed for reasons none of them understood. One crew member insisted the ship could not maintain secrecy much longer, while the other warned that passengers must never discover what was hidden within the stores. Mara felt a chill sweep through her as the pieces began to align, forming a truth both simple and harrowing. The ship had been receiving alternate supplies of uncertain origin, goods acquired through a chain of rushed transactions and unverified vendors, possibly due to sudden shortages or internal failures. The food served on board had not been properly vetted, perhaps not safe at all. The realization pulsed through her with growing dread, and yet she sensed there was more beneath this surface truth, a deeper layer concealed behind fear and silence. She waited until the crew moved on before slipping from the room, keeping to the shadows as she made her way toward the galley, where the chaos of preparation masked her approach. The smell of spices and steam filled the air, but beneath it she sensed that same troubling undertone, the faint aroma of something spoiled, something out of place. She observed the chefs working with unusual haste, their eyes flickering with a tension they fought to hide. Several dishes were discarded rapidly, replaced without explanation, while others were whisked away by supervisors who examined each plate with thinly veiled anxiety.